Welcome back to the JM Report. This is episode 13, coming to you from the CSB studios in Tampa, Florida, the home place of pro wrestling. And speaking of pro wrestling, its community, its fans, all the hardworking men and women involved, unfortunately, have lost another legend in Big Van Vader, Leon White, who portrayed Vader, or the man known as Vader, the man they call Vader. At the age of 63, after struggling with a severe case of pneumonia, passed away Monday night. His son Jesse would tweet out, "Around a month ago, my father was diagnosed with a severe case of pneumonia. He fought extremely hard and clinically was making progress. Unfortunately, on Monday night, his heart had enough, and it was his time." I've had the privilege to meet the man a few years ago in Queens, New York, over at the Wrestling Universe. And I gotta say, it was one of the most wonderful experiences I've had, meeting not only a legend, but, a giant in the business. The man stood about 6'5", and depending on what point of his career you're looking at, he could have been anywhere from 350 pounds or more. But at that moment for me, it was speaking to a gentle giant, and took time to answer a couple of questions I've had. I was a little younger, so it's ambiguous and wanted to know certain things, but nothing serious, nothing personal. It's just, I remember both questions. One of them might have been, things, oh my goodness, what was it? I guess his toughest opponent, I believe it was, or the toughest match he's ever had. That's something I would normally ask someone, and depending who you ask, they may have a different answer, with the next person, and maybe have a shoot interview and have a completely different answer at that point as well. But I believe he did say Stan Hansen. And speaking of, Vader inducted him to the Hall of Fame for the WWE a couple of years ago. And we all remember, or at least most of us do, that famous match they had in Japan. And I still can't figure out. I'm sure Vader must have done a shoot interview and he explained it. I just haven't seen it. But even watching the footage, I still can't make out exactly what caused Vader's eye to pop out of his socket, and took a moment to remove his mask and somehow placed it back in and continue the match against Stan Hansen, ironically. Just goes to show how tough the man was. He had a great WCW career. I think his WCW career was much better than the one he had in WWE. Now, of course, multiple-time champion. I don't think Vader won the big gold belt, the one that Ric Flair wore proudly and was most recognizable for. This was a time where Flair jumped ship and took the belt with him to the World Wrestling Federation. So WCW was left to create a new championship, a new physical belt, and Vader won it a couple of times, I believe. Didn't watch too much WCW back then, but I knew enough that he became champion. He had a great feud with Ron Simmons, and staying over the title. And when he made that jump to the WWF at the time, Flair had already returned, and this was about 94, 95, and Flair had just returned, and Vader started his feud with Hulk Hogan, and it's a mixed bag. I'm trying to remember, you reach my age, you tend to forget a little bit of the details, but there was enough memory there to know that at one point or another, Flair, Hogan, and Vader all shared a career under the same umbrella, and this being a WCW. So Vader was a 3-time world champion. So, okay, that was clear. And a 1-time United States champion. And unfortunately did not win any championships in the World Wrestling Federation, even though he was feuded against Shawn Michaels at SummerSlam. And if you listen to Bruce Pritchard and Jim Cornette's podcast, that the original plan was to have Vader go over and become champion. It would have lasted about a few months, but point being, Vader defeated Shawn and would move on with that feud to the end of the year, I believe, to Survivor Series. But Vader did not participate. That's when Sid was brought in, and Sid was champion instead, leading to the Rumble in '97, where Shawn won it back. As far as why, well, depending whose word you take, really. Although the stories sound very similar, in that not only Vader was supposed to go over, but Shawn Michaels, who at the time was a different person, and he did a lot of, well, I don't want to say politicking, because otherwise he would have controlled everybody's careers, really. But he was in Vince McMahon's ear and made a few complaints about previous matches before SummerSlam, about standing on his hair, that he was too rough and this and that. I mean, if you were a fan of Vader, you would have known something about that, or about him at that time. That Vader, yes, he was very stiff in the ring. You know, he'll knock you silly. He'll make you think it's Tuesday when it's still Saturday of 6 months ago. But Vader took pro wrestling career and the sport itself very serious, and he would do anything to protect it and not take too kindly to anyone who thought otherwise or insult. But I'll have another example about that in a second. But to get back to the Shawn Michaels story, yeah, the plans were changed. And if you didn't think that wasn't the case, during the match itself, Vader was laying in the middle of the ring. Shawn was jumping off the top rope only to land on his feet and yell in Vader's face to move. Stomps on him, tells him to move again, and does a few more stomps. And legend goes that in that spot, Vader was supposed to move, he didn't remember, and that Shawn was extremely upset and just decided to expose him or embarrass him, if you will. But here's my thing. If you've been watching pro wrestling as long as I have, you would know that, for example, someone like Bret Hart, who does his famous elbow drop from the second rope, and his actions is where, you know, he makes contact, usually in the sternum area or a little higher in the chin or throat area, and basically Bret Hart lands on his knees while making the contact. And when that move didn't go so well, or wouldn't go so well for Bret, he would take a back bump. But we wouldn't know that until it actually happens. So Bret's momentum is killed off at that point. So Shawn, he's famous for using, as has been now famously known for, the Randy Savage elbow drop, or the Macho Man's elbow drop. And, you know, he's used it for a signature move, not for a finisher. And that was set up for the Sweet Chin Music. But if he was meant to miss, Shawn that is, and Vader moves or rolls out of the way, then the instinct there, or the assumption would be that Shawn would take a back bump while Vader is rolling out. Granted, he didn't at all, and Shawn had to improvise. So, again, if he was meant to miss Shawn, he still would have taken that back bump. Of course, it's difficult to adjust yourself in midair. To me, it just is to adjust your body in midair against gravity and still pull off the move of whatever it was you were trying to do. And to still yell at him and still call him out on that, kind of suspicious there. However, the flip side would be maybe Vader wasn't supposed to, regardless of what Vader was supposed to do, it didn't happen. He forgot or didn't know it was that moment, but it didn't happen. So if Vader wasn't meant to move, and was meant to counter the elbow drop or whatever Shawn was going to do, and was not meant to roll out of the way, then have his foot up, and Shawn would take a shot in the chin or in the jaw somewhere, and the momentum shifts at that point. But again, that will only work because, of course, you're not going to take a full-fledged foot in your face while, dropping an elbow and your body's twisted and it's all horizontal in midair. It's just no way to take a safe bump that way. And I'm kind of, pulling the curtain back here, but usually the spot is the foot goes up and the person dropping the elbow basically lands on their feet while taking the shot of the foot to the face, and then you just fall back or fall forward or wherever you're going. But none of that happened. Neither of those actions took place, other than Shawn calling Vader out. And looking back, it was just completely unnecessary. And Shawn had his ways. Of course, he would lighten up as time would go on, thankfully, for the better. But I still say, and I still believe, Vader would have been a tremendous dominant heel champion in the WWF. Unfortunately, things obviously didn't work out that way, and had different people not in charge, but if different people didn't just fall to pressure because Shawn's not smiling anymore, we gotta keep him happy because we got plans for him, or this and that. And it's funny how you look at today's WWE environment as far as who they want us, the fans, to accept to be over, but they're just being real stubborn with it. Back then, whoever the champion was, or your top guys that was making the money for you, or helping you with increasing in the ratings or whatnot during the Monday Night Wars, there was as if there was just no time for that kind of argument. Like, all right, I'll bow down to your wishes even though I'm the boss, but we'll do it your way and readjust whatever creative had at the time, and let's just move forward. I just want to get out of this. I want to get through the show and think about Raw or think about the next pay-per-view, because back then there wasn't SmackDown. But anyway, Vader is yet to be inducted into the Hall of Fame of the WWE. I really hate to point out that it would take something like this to rush that decision, but we've seen this before, and it's just something that should have been done a long time ago. Vader would return on a number of occasions. He will pop up making appearances for Legends Night or Raw 1000, things like that, and he wasn't forgotten, that's for sure. And I don't think he ever will be. But at the age of 63 only, I mean, that's still too young. I don't know. I never knew him personally. And just going on what others have shared story-wise, that he may not have taken care of himself physically over the years, but, not aware of any personal issues or any demons he was battling besides the ones that were affecting his health. There was a story once shared back in 2007 that it was abusing alcohol at the time, and sorry about that, but the man went through similar issues that any other person would. Not that they're all the same, but he battled alcohol issues. He went through a divorce. He was very lucky to be very close to his son Jesse, and here we are. I mean, what else can I say about it? Vader would do anything for the business, so much so that back in '97, Vader was arrested after that incident on Kuwaiti TV, where the WWF was on tour, and It was Kuwait's version of ABC's Good Morning America, so Good Morning Kuwait. So it was Vader and The Undertaker, who was the champion at the time, doing interviews. And of course, like many reporters do when it comes to speaking to pro wrestlers, bringing up the issue that pro wrestling was fake. Vader, of course, took issue with this, and he didn't physically assault him, but he did grab the man by his tie and stood over him as the reporter sat on his chair. And Vader just got in his face and, you know, talking about, do you think this is fake? Do you feel this as fake? And Taker, who was a veteran at this point, you know, already a legend in the making long term, just sat there as if he was contemplating should he or should he not get involved, because he was wearing his sunglasses, but then he wasn't doing the American Badass thing yet. That was just him outside the ring, and as the Undertaker character, who was just being more vocal. So Vader was arrested. He unfortunately had to stay behind as the tour continued and eventually wrapped up and everyone returned home to the States. Vader was basically on house arrest, staying at a hotel and just waiting trial. And this even made air on Monday Night Raw. Vince spoke to Vader over the phone. I don't know if they were trying to make light of this, or the fact that, you know, somebody overseas called us out on being fake, and this was their response. So now, as punishment, they're being arrested for it. You know, they're kind of like almost blur the lines there of reality, because, you know, you're not allowed, as much as you want to strangle the guy's neck of a reporter because they asked an inappropriate question or something you just don't want to talk about, but they push the issue. You know, in some cases people walk out, but Vader reacted completely differently, and it cost him a few days of his life and his freedom. But eventually, it took a few months. The incident took place in the springtime, but Vader wasn't fined eventually until that fall. So a good maybe 6, 7, 8 months would pass, and only ended up paying $164 for the incident, and was released and was able to return home. Beyond those details, Vader and Kuwait never crossed paths again, and, you know, that's probably the most modern day story of what a wrestler would do or react when a reporter, in this case, tells you or asks you point blank, you know, about wrestling being fake. I understand the concept. I understand the F word, different kind of F word, but you know, it leads into a whole other debate, and it shouldn't even be the case where reporters should be asking that at this point in time, even after everything's been exposed. And Vince McMahon himself even took to television on that infamous speech where, you know, we're tired of you. We think we're tired. How's it go? We at the WWF think that your intelligence are being insulted, or something like that. And even though they kind of still are today, but you know, Vince took that opportunity and pretty much, you know, not there's any relations to the Vader incident in Kuwait, but Vince would eventually take center stage and come out and say, well, yeah, we're sports entertainment. You know, if that's the cover up word or the alternate description from the F word, then okay. Still, I personally still don't call it that. And I'm pretty sure I made the argument here that a lot of fans won't flat out not refer to it or call it sports entertainment. It's still pro wrestling or just wrestling. Growing up, that's what I called it. In my adult life, that's what I still call it. And I've always used the argument among colleagues, and whenever we would walk in the office or at some point during the week, we'll meet up in the morning during a break, or, when you're punching in and say, hey man, did you happen to catch that sports entertainment pay-per-view on Sunday night? Who has ever said that? No one. And out of all the things they don't shove down your throat, I'm surprised they're not still with it. I mean, you still hear it on commentary, but as far as overly trying to convince the audience to call it that, they're not doing that for now. I'm sure things will change, but this doesn't change the fact that we again lost another great legend in Vader, Leon White. I can only I can only assume this week on Raw and Smackdown, if they haven't already, as far as television shows, make an announcement or acknowledge the passing of Vader. I think that'll be the right thing to do. They've done great business together and have had a great working relationship. So it's only fair for them to acknowledge Vader, if not for a 10-bell salute like I did, but at least have the graphic of Vader in the beginning of the show, and maybe as we speak, they're putting together a video package for the man, and for the network have the best of Vader matches, so that we can all look back and relive those great moments in the man's career, and wherever he is now, among the other legends. I hope he's found his peace, that his family and friends continue to remember him. The fans will always remember him, whether it's the network, video game, download characters, watching reruns of Boy Meets World, Baywatch. The man had a great life. The man had a great career. And all I can say here at the end for Leon White, Big Van Vader, may you rest in peace. WWE had a long weekend last week with NXT Take Over Chicago, Money in the Bank, and Raw and Smackdown this week, and lots have happened, to say the least. So I'll just read off the results here from NXT Take Over Chicago, where the event opened up with a tag team championship match as the Undisputed Era defended against Danny Burch and Oney Lorcan. Awesome match. I mean, well, then again, what NXT TakeOver event haven't been, and I'm sure others would rank it from beginning to end, from the very first TakeOver to now. But point being that it's never been a dull moment with NXT TakeOver shows, and this show was no exception. But the Undisputed Era would retain over Lorcan and Burch, as O'Reilly and Strong were the chosen three of the Undisputed Era, as Adam Cole, the North American champion, sat this one out. Well, he was ringside, but he would be kicked out towards the end, and the champions would retain the titles. Later on, we saw probably the match of the year, candidacy for sure, but definitely the match of the night, in my opinion. Ricochet taking on the Velveteen Dream. Still not easy for me to say. But this match had everything we expected and more. A couple of spots of holy shit moments. But, of course, what stood out the most here was Velveteen Dream's ring attire, of course. I didn't realize at first. I thought it was just, just something he put together. And I think I was reaching down for my iced tea drink on the floor. And when I looked up, Dream was already making his entrance, and the camera was filming from behind him. And I noticed the rips on his back of his shirt. I'm like, okay, that's kind of Hulk Hogan-ish. And then I realized the boa. And what didn't sell me completely yet was the way he wore his bandana. I'm like, whoa, okay, that's not. And then they zoom out and they see Dream Still Over t-shirt written exactly the way Hulk Hogan's shirt used to be, Hulk Rules, or Hulk Still Rules. I'm like, oh, okay, now it's plainly obvious, even though his tights said otherwise. I was thinking Black Panther. I was thinking anything but a spinoff or or an homage, if you will. He definitely wasn't ripping off Hulk Hogan, that's for sure. Did he use inspiration? Definitely, but a ripoff, I definitely will not go that far. But because it was in his own style, it just happens to be very similar. I mean, the Showster, that was a ripoff, obviously, clearly. Axelmania, it was blatantly obvious. This not so much, as again it was Dream's own identity, and again, it was inspirational. But anyway, taking on Ricochet here. And I was, my mind was blown away. I haven't seen too many Ricochet matches previously to NXT. I'm aware, I'm only just now catching up with Lucha Underground and all of the great matches he's had there, even as their champion. Who, by the way, Lucha Underground returned last week for their new 4th season, in a new revenue, new bosses, if you will. But I'll cover that soon here on the JM Report. But this match was unbelievable from start to finish. The fans were into it, and at the end, it was Ricochet who would defeat the Dream, as the Dream tried to put Purple Rainmaker across the ring, but missed, allowing Ricochet to deliver his 630 splash for the win. What a great match! Again, if you haven't seen it yet, or even if you've seen it already, I'll probably go back this week and watch it again. It was such a great match. NXT Women's Championship was defended from Shayna Baszler versus Nikki Cross, the one sole Sanity member that stayed behind, unfortunately, was not called up, but Nikki Cross, she's come a long way. I mean, I don't think she's ever had a disappointing match that I can remember. But the story here was Nikki kept coming after Baszler, and Baszler would oblige no matter what she threw at Nikki Cross. She just kept coming. But once Baszler applied her chokehold, does that have a name to it? I can't remember. Let me see. At some point, Baszler played possum, but grabbed a Cross in the chokehold, and had the challenger just moments away from tapping. But Cross attempted to feed off the energy to fight off the chokehold, but Baszler just tightened up the grip more and more, refusing to tap out. Nikki Cross was, and eventually Cross would pass out, and the referee called for a stoppage and the end of the match. So Nikki Cross never tapped out or never submitted, just passing out to Shayna Baszler's chokehold here, a rear naked choke, and retained, as Shayna Baszler is still the NXT Women's Champion. And we will see the NXT Heavyweight Championship defended by Aleister Black, taking on Lars Sullivan. Is this guy getting bigger and bigger, like physically getting bigger and bigger every time he pops up on live television? It's just unbelievable. But a great back and forth match here. Definitely power versus agility and flexibility here from Aleister Black. So at one point there was a single power slam from Sullivan on the ring apron, and that was hard to watch. I couldn't imagine how it felt. And it would cut off a series of big boots by the champion and a diving headbutt that led to a 2 count. Oh, I'm just trying to remember the match here. But the champion fought back and delivered 2 black mass kicks. One missed about a few inches. And this was the only downfall of the match, although overall it was a great match. And Lars didn't see it coming, but he still sold for it anyway. And the fans, everyone, so clearly obvious, called him out on it and chanting, you messed up and things like that. But it didn't matter, because that was the moment to go home and to make up for it, I guess. Aleister Black, that is, would have delivered 2 more black mass kicks and got the win. And Lars Sullivan looked great here. Definitely a threat for the title, or any title for that matter, in NXT right now. And hopefully we haven't heard the end of this. As far as Sullivan going after the world title, if he's not called up anytime soon and hopefully used properly, he will definitely be a force to be reckoned with. He's such a huge man, and definitely an unstoppable force. And in the main event, we saw Johnny Gargano taking on his former tag team partner of Tommaso Ciampa in a Chicago street fight. Wow. This one was just as great as the Ricochet Dream match. Definitely a worthy candidate for match of the year. But I think just by a hair, Ricochet Dream match was a little bit better. But this one had more drama to it, more emotion into it. We would see Ciampa defeat Gargano in a surprising move here, booking-wise, that is. But they just beat the snot out of each other. There were a lot of table spots here. There was another apron spot. They fought near the entranceway where there was a spot here, but I'll get to it. I'll explain a gripe about it when I get to it. But there were these cases stacked up, and Ciampa would basically drag Gargano up top, and I guess his mind was convinced that he wanted to throw him off through a set of tables that were already on the floor, 2 sets of tables next to each other, with, for some reason, laptops. Were they legit? Props? Don't know. But they were there. And Gargano would counter and would launch Ciampa with Gargano attached through the tables. And there was nothing between the tables and the ground. It was just that little carpet there for aesthetics. But Gargano crashed. He crashed and burned there. And speaking of those laptops, I'm not sure if he made enough contact where it bounced off his head, and because he landed on the table where the laptop was at the edge, but I think Gargano made more contact with the floor itself, and only to bounce back and make contact with that laptop there. Why are laptops there in that particular position, that particular spot where everything else is set up in plain view is beyond me. That didn't make any sense to me, but that's just a little gripe. But anyway, so Gargano was back on top of that stack of cases and realized that, well, one, what just happened. So he's just, I guess, taking it all in, and realized that moments ago, Ciampa removed Gargano's wedding ring and spat on it and tossed it away. And Gargano just loses his mind here. He'll come back down after Ciampa was placed on a stretcher, put the neck brace on and everything. And he was trying to be wheeled out, but no, Gargano would have nothing else, none of this. He would beat up the referees. He would beat up anyone who was trying to wheel out Ciampa and roll them back towards the ring. Now, at this point, Ciampa had exposed the ring floor. He, from the hard camera angle, the furthest right corner of the ring, he tore up the ring canvas, the apron, and exposed the wood underneath. And his plan was to, I guess, slam or throw Gargano at some point in that spot. But they will come back towards the ring area. Gargano would handcuff Ciampa behind his back after Ciampa presented into the match earlier but never used them. So he comes back around. Ciampa at this point was able to maneuver himself to have his arms in front of him, because these were these long, exaggerated, federal prison handcuffs where they were about maybe 2 or 3 feet long. So the chain, that is. So Ciampa was able to maneuver his arms in front of his body. And as soon as Gargano was trying to get into the ring, of course, he went in head first instead of just one leg at a time. Ciampa catches him and DDTs Gargano on the exposed wood and got the 3 count. So now Ciampa has won over probably this feud. I would love to see this end in, say, a steel cage match, but you know, there's only so much more time you can drag out of this. I'm not complaining. These guys, since the original cruiserweight challenge or the tournament. Oh my God, I can't remember. But you know, basically the World Cruiserweight Classic. Since that tournament, and they were still tag team partners at the time, and just happened to be going one-on-one with each other, I believe, in the opening round. And they had since then had such great matches, one after another, even after Ciampa's heel turn a year ago, to lead to where we are now. You know, I can never complain about these guys not having a good match, and for them to finish off this in this manner would be okay. But you know, of course, we all want to see the good guy triumphant, if you will. Ironically, since you know, Mr. Wrestling was wearing an inspired Captain America suit or ring attire, if you will, and yeah, a steel cage wouldn't be far-fetched. Maybe the first ever Hell in a Cell in NXT wouldn't be too much to ask for, but I say, like always, why not? Let's just go there. And that closed the NXT TakeOver Chicago show. Next up will be for SummerSlam weekend, Philadelphia, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I'm probably wrong, but that will be the next TakeOver show in August, the weekend of SummerSlam. So Money in the Bank, overall, I'm going to say it was a pretty good show. Wasn't too much of a dull moment, regardless of what fans were chanting and whatever shenanigans the commentators were talking about. I did watch the majority of this show on mute. I just can't stand those commentators anymore. They're unbearable at this point. But yeah, I was correct a couple of weeks ago that even though the B team won the tag team battle royal and we're going to be presented a tag team championship match, it wasn't mentioned if it would be at the Money in the Bank. And I don't remember ever seeing a graph for it or an announcement, but they were going to be the new #1 contenders. And of course, the match never happened. It was never acknowledged. It was never explained why it wasn't on at all, but it never happened. So the kickoff show had the SmackDown Tag Team Championship of the Bludgeon Brothers, and they retained versus the Good Brothers. A very impressive match here, as Luke Harper and Eric Rowan, they're looking like the heavyweight division version of the Rockers to me, because they're pulling out these double team maneuvers. I mean, yeah, they're not flying off the top ropes and things of that nature. I get that, but there was a spot outside the ring where they performed a double drop kick on the concrete floor. And I believe that was against Anderson, only to go back into the ring and pull off their two-man powerbomb maneuver on Luke Gallows, the bigger man of the team, and who was just as big as the Bludgeon Brothers. To me, that was very impressive, and the Bludgeon Brothers, probably for this reason alone, is why they are the tag team champions. Not because they're a great heel team, but I think they pose not a threat, because they're the champions, so what threat can they pose but a threat where they can't be defeated, or at least not found yet a worthy opponents or worthy challengers for their titles. But the Bludgeon Brothers retained here during the kickoff match. The opening match had Danel Bryan go over Big Cass, as it turned out to be his last match on WWE television, and I'll get to that story in a bit. And this match was much better than the Backlash match, for sure. A flying knee and then a heel hook for the win. Danel Bryan goes over. So basically 2 straight pay-per-view matches over Big Cass, the heel, where many thought this should have been Big Cass's moment to shine. But as it turns out, a lot led up to this, and what took place on Tuesday, moments before or hours before SmackDown went live. Bobby Lashley took on Sami Zayn in what, for now, was Sami Zayn's last televised match for now, and I'll get to that in a moment. And the angle itself was awful, I gotta say, and I know I'm not the only one here, so I'm thankful for that. The build-up wasn't all that, and the match was not any better, unfortunately. It just took, at the end, 3 delayed vertical suplexes from Lashley, and that was enough to take out Sami Zayn, and that's it. You know, it wasn't really a post-match interview with Zayn to see if what's going to be next for him, if anything was going to lead into Monday Night Raw, but no, that was just it. You know, just to dust your hands off and we move on. For the Intercontinental Championship, Seth Rollins defeated Elias, and probably Elias' greatest match in a long time. You forget how good Elias can be in the ring when given the opportunity. I know Raw, he's had pretty good matches, but in length and able to hang on and keep up with someone like the likes of a Seth Rollins, especially as the Intercontinental Champion, yeah, I think they didn't drop the ball with Elias. I'm not saying that, but they just need to realize who and what they have here at their disposal, and to give Elias something else to work with or someone else to work with in a match. It doesn't have to be for the title or anything like that, but to put on a great show. I think this put Elias back on WWE's creative radar, if you will, to say, hey, you know, this guy has something here. Either we just didn't know it or forgot about it. But Elias would try to roll up Rollins here, but it would be reversed. And Rollins did a kind of a heelish thing, as he had a handful of, well, it wasn't tights or his Elias's pants. It was his belt line. But it was enough leverage to keep Elias down for the 3 count and Rollins to retain his Intercontinental Championship. The women's Money in the Bank ladder match, where Ember Moon, Becky Lynch, Natalya, Lana, Naomi, Sasha Banks, Charlotte Flair, and Alexa Bliss all just went in there to beat the crap out of each other with ladders, whether they were used as weapons or slammed onto or thrown off of. These women left everything in the ring. I think this was a better match than the original women's Money in the Bank ladder match a year ago. Each one of them had a moment to shine in the match. And in the end, we saw Becky Lynch that was just out of reach. Even though she was there, she could have just literally unhooked the damn thing, the briefcase, and just be gone with it. But it looks like she was just stalling for time, as Alexa Bliss might have missed or didn't realize that, hey, we're going home here, and tips over the ladder to knock off Becky Lynch, only to climb the ladder herself and unhook the briefcase, as Alexa Bliss becomes the new Mrs. Money in the Bank, representing Raw. And this will not be the last we will hear of Alexa Bliss, as it turns out. Roman Reigns took on Jinder Mahal finally, after sparing most of us, or if not everyone, from the match that did not take place on Monday Night Raw the week before. The crowd shit all over this match. I mean, it didn't even start. And yeah, I mentioned before that I watched the majority of the show on mute, but this particular one, being in Chicago, and Chicago is known for being one of the rowdiest crowds in the States, I needed to hear the reaction to Roman Reigns here. And needless to say, it was like, what didn't they chant? You know, it sucked. You're boring. CM Punk, at one point, they did a wave around the arena, just to show that they're just not interested, not only in Roman Reigns, but a Roman Reigns match, period. And whoever his opponent is, in this case Jinder Mahal, has to suffer it from it as well. But even watching the match on mute after one point, but it was a pretty good match. I mean, it wasn't the best, wasn't the worst. It was, you know, somewhere in the middle. I mean, I was expecting a more of a, you know, power versus power kind of match, because, you know, Jinder's a pretty big guy himself and not known, say, for his you know, powerhouse type of tactics or style, say like the Warlord or the British Bulldog back in the day. But, you know, if he looks the part, why not play it? I'm not expecting Jinder to press slam anyone anytime soon, but, you know, you have the height for it, you have the build for it, and he could have given a run for Reigns' money, but, you know, that wasn't the case here. And Samin Singh, who was beaten up the week before, was used basically as a puppet here to cause distractions, a couple of times to interfere, including pushing Roman Reigns into the ring post on the outside. But Singh would go to that well one too many times as he was caught and was Superman punched back to his wheelchair as he came out in the beginning of the match and knocked over. And Reigns will go back into the ring, spear, Superman punch, and gets the win over Jinder Mahal in this match, and we move on. SmackDown Women's Championship match as Carmella defends against Asuka. This was Carmella's time to shine a little bit. She performed a little bit better than expected here, as for some reason, I just don't know, for as long as Carmella's been in the business, like compared to someone like Alana, who has been there a little longer but had no ring time in comparison, I would have thought Carmella would look a little bit better here. And she looks great to begin with. I guess that's her way of disguising all that. But either way, just expect a little bit more ability-wise in the ring, that is. So, me personally, and I know I wasn't the only one, it was just a matter of, okay, when is it going to happen? And that being a mysterious figure showed up in an Asuka mask and robe, and coincidentally having a hood under the mask, jumped up on the apron and caught Asuka, the real Asuka's attention, and just looked in awe, like, who is this? What is this? Have my clothes come to life? What's going on here? Carmella would try to interfere, but Asuka will knock her back down, so it's back to the distraction because it's still standing there. And I think I think it was purposely milked longer than it needed to be. And sure enough, the mask gets pulled off, and it's James Ellsworth who's returned to the WWE, proving that the rumors were true all week long. Of course, if you're expecting him to show up in the show in Asia, probably not much of a fan of that. But business is business, and I don't think Ellsworth knows how to blink, or I'm sorry, doesn't know how to wink properly. But that's just a minor nitpick. As Asuka was distracted long enough and turns around back to Carmella, gets super kicked and gets the 1, 2, 3, and Carmella retains the SmackDown Women's Championship. And James, no word if he's gonna ever present the intergender championship here. I doubt that, even though we've seen a match between himself and Becky Lynch before his original release. But maybe as a, I don't know, maybe not meant to be defended per se, but the fact that, like, well, he's taken on and beaten all comers in the men's division, and now he's hanging out with the women's champion on SmackDown. But I don't know, something to that degree. But I don't think for sure in the long run that it will ever be presented, the intergender championship. But it was something done before, going back to the Andy Kaufman days, so it's nothing new. And I really doubt WWE will go for it. For the WWE Championship, defended in a last man standing match, AJ Styles took on Shinsuke Nakamura. A bit of a slow start, but once they got to the outside and Shinsuke ended up using all 3 announce tables that were ringside, the Spanish, the American, and I believe it was a German announce team. So Shinsuke would set up Styles over the German announce table, and he'll walk over to the opposite end, taking off the table cover of the other 2 tables, and would run across and nail Styles with the running knee, with the Kinshasa. And this being a last man standing match, every latch diff effort of AJ Styles in his power would try to beat the 10 count, standing up at 9 or the count of 8, 9, stand right up as if it was like an adrenaline rush, getting his second win on several occasions. I thought that was funny enough where I was like, oh, come on, how many more of those do you have in you? But Styles pulled it off really convincing, where it's possible. And when the tables turned here, AJ Styles had Shinsuke against the announce table, after being beaten down, Shinsuke would beat his own 10 count. Styles would it was showing signs of frustration. Shinsuke's there like, come on, and the first dick kick from AJ to Shinsuke in a while, because at some point early in the match, Shinsuke did do his uppercut forearm, penis spot, and AJ still yet to learn to wear a cup against Shinsuke Nakamura here, but it is what it is. So after the dick kick, Styles will go back into the ring, wait for Shinsuke to get back up, and pull off a phenomenal forearm over the top rope out to the ring floor, nailing Nakamura, and go through the American announce table. And that will be enough for the 10 count as AJ Styles retains the WWE Championship. Then it was time for the Raw Women's Championship, Nia Jax defending against Ronda Rousey. And I got to say, after Ronda Rousey's debut at WrestleMania, her in-ring debut, that is, and she performed really well there. My only concern was her timing and not being off by a step or two. But then again, she was put in a match against Stephanie McMahon, who, if ever, rarely wrestles at all. And her time can always be off, and that's expected. But Ronda, of course, is the more athletic sportswoman here, if you will, that is expected to perform much better, and all eyes on her. No pressure. But in this match with Nia Jax, Ronda, blew everyone's expectation. She hung in there. Her timing was much better, and her selling job is amazing, I gotta say. When Nia was placing Ronda in the bear hug, Ronda really sold that well, and of course, again, looking amazing in the ring as Nia used all of her power to keep Ronda at bay. And at one point, jumps off the top rope with a cross body block, Ronda did, and she popped. She didn't pop, but the crowd popped for that spot. And the next move was Ronda doing a judo throw on the bigger Nia Jax, which again had another huge pop and one of those jaw-dropping moments. Like, wow, she took her over. So now she's getting ready to apply her armbar, and we all seen Nia Jax tap out to this before. So we're about to crown a new champion, right? Nope. In comes Alexa Bliss, nailing Ronda from behind with the briefcase, causing a DQ, and threw out of the ring and beat down Nia Jax. And it was here that Alexa decided, I'm cashing in. So she hands over the briefcase to the ref. The ref makes the call. The bell rings. They get over to the corner, and Alexa nails Nia Jax with her Twisted Bliss, splash off the top rope, gets a 3 count, and now Alexa Bliss is your new Raw Women's Champion. And this wasn't, I wouldn't say it was too predictable, but I was in a position where, you know what, it would not surprise me if they do something like this, because it's been a while and it took nearly a year for Carmella to cash in. So I don't know if that was their way. Let's just get this out of the way now and not worry about, when and where so-and-so's going to cash in their briefcase because they're still carrying it, and so on and so forth. I guess we have one less briefcase to worry about because there'll still be the men's briefcase to focus on. And speaking of which, that was the main event at Money in the Bank, as the men's ladder match Money in the Bank took place, as Kofi Kingston was chosen from the New Day to participate, along with Rusev, Braun Strowman, The Miz, Samoa Joe, Finn Balor, Bobby Roode, and Kevin Owens. Everyone beat down Braun Strowman early in the match, all the way to the back entrance, where they buried him under this huge set of ladders, and then they will move on, try to beat the rest of each other down and climb up the ladder. At one point, Finn was knocked out of the ring, decides to grab another ladder from the top of the rampway, only to see Braun Strowman rise up as if, he got struck by lightning, a la Jason Voorhees in Friday the 13th, Part 6. And he just killed everybody. Braun Strowman did. This is going to be a little bit out of order, but if you saw the match, you know what I'm talking about. They were trying to set up Braun Strowman on a table as Kevin Owens and The Miz was holding him down. and you see Kevin Owens climb up to the top of this huge ladder, but I don't know if it was 20, 40, 50 feet, but it was ridiculously tall. And it looked like Kevin Owens was changing his mind, but it didn't matter as Strowman was breaking free from his two captives, and he would climb up the same ladder, grab a hold of Owens, and he just launched him and go through a set of tables. Again, with laptops. Now, I know in one of the replays, I know Owens made contact with one of these laptops on his head and immediately reacted to it as if like, oh my God, I think I just, cracked my skull or something. Why are those laptops there? I mean, what's the reasoning behind it? And, don't say anything like, oh, it's decoration, or that's where the reporters or the magazine writers or whatever they do nowadays with those laptops. I'm like, no, they were just there. That if they're meant to be props, okay, put them in Raven's shopping cart or Tommy Dreamer's trash can, but just there for the hell of it. That probably it's probably the same two laptops from the night before at Takeover. Anyway, moving on here. So not Roman, but Braun Strowman would make his way back to ringside. As you see, Balor and Rude hold up another long ladder, I guess, preventing Strowman from getting through as a barricade. And Strowman just ran through that, knocking them both down and through the ladder itself. It was just complete chaos at this point. But at the end, we saw Balor climb up on one side, Strowman on the other. Kofi Kingston would springboard off the top rope and land behind Strowman's back. And for a second there, Kingston became a backpack for Strowman as he climbed up to the top of the ladder. He will knock over Balor. He would eventually knock over Kingston. And Strowman would reach up and remove the briefcase, and now is the new Mr. Money in the Bank. And he's already made it clear that he's going after Brock Lesnar and the Universal Championship. Unbelievable. So all of this leads into Monday Night Raw. And the show opened up with Kurt Angle presenting Alexa Bliss with the title, as Bliss apparently requested for a celebration of sorts for reasons, because she's still a heel. Ronda Rousey will come down, understandably pissed off, trying to get to Bliss. Of course, she continues to talk more trash, and Ronda just loses it here. She attacks Bliss and picks up the same briefcase that Alexa won the night before, starts beating her down with it. Kurt Angle's trying to get back Ronda, but Ronda turned and started attacking Angle with the same briefcase. And anyone who came in, referees, officials, they all felt the wrath of Ronda Rousey. She was just pissed. And to top it off, I even said, well, there's still a table standing there. I think Ronda should take care of that. And sure, Ronda just picks up Little Bliss with ease and just power bombs her through a table. In the replay, didn't help matters because you see Alexa Bliss looking towards the table as she's being held up in almost a torture rack position, and or I should say in a backbreaker position to be power bombed. That she's just looking and looking. that kind of gave it away, but it's the replays. At that point, it didn't matter anymore. So Ronda suspended for 30 days, and as of WWE.com announced later on in the week, when Ronda will not return until Wednesday, July 18th, 3 days after Extreme Rules. So Ronda's going to miss Extreme Rules. However, this is just a theory of mine, maybe a possible booking idea. And whatever match they're going to have Alexa Bliss in, she has to now at this point. Maybe a rematch against Nia Jackson in a gimmick match or something. But I think Ronda will show up, and assuming it will be some kind of no DQ match, just beat the crap out of Alexa, maybe Nia Jax, because that feud was never settled, and maybe expand on the suspension, or there'll be some kind of appeal, because at that point Ronda will be 3 days short of her suspension being lifted, moving forward to SummerSlam. But this kind of goes against, and I know I said this before here, going against Ronda Rousey appearing on every episode of Monday Night Raw moving forward. Well, not if you're suspended, kayfabe, that is. So I don't know who booked this crap, but suspended, I get it, because you attacked the general manager and you beat up other officials. I get that, but You know, I guess they had no choice than to go that route because it made sense. But common sense and creative here doesn't always get along. Seth Rollins then had an open challenge for his Intercontinental Championship, awaiting anyone that would come down the ramp, and to not too many surprises, Dolph Ziggler would come out, but then almost immediately it was Drew McIntyre. So for a moment the question was then who is it going to be challenging for the title? So they kind of had like a little glare at each other, McIntyre and Ziggler, and gave the nod of approval. And it was Dolph Ziggler chosen to be Seth Rollins' challenger. And probably one of the biggest surprises in quite some time. It's been a long time for sure since this happened, especially on Raw. But after a minor distraction from Drew McIntyre, Seth Rollins turned around and was rolled up and was pinned. 1, 2, 3. Dolph Ziggler is now the new Intercontinental Champion. They finally found something for Ziggler to do, that is. And now I want to see these guys win all the titles. But, you know, Dolph Ziggler had a great match here, a great win. It took a real long time. You know, that whole mystery a year ago, what's Ziggler going to do? Is he going to resign? Is he going to go away? Even after returning, they really had nothing for him. It's just like, we'll figure it out as we go. I guess better late than never. But Roman, because a lot of these guys with the long hair and the facial features, they almost resemble each other. So it's sometimes difficult for me to keep track. But Seth Rollins has already invoked his rematch clause, and that will take place this coming Monday night on Raw against Dolph Ziggler for the Intercontinental Championship. There, I said it. In another squash match. Let's just call it a squash match. Bobby Roode defeated Kurt Hawkins, and we move on here. Kevin Owens would come out after Braun Strowman's cut a promo that he's planning to to cash in his Money in the Bank contract against Brock Lesnar for the Universal Championship. And Kevin Owens would come out and try to apologize for what happened and wanted to cause, or create, I should say, a staple between himself and Strowman, because without him, you cannot beat Lesnar alone. So they went for a handshake. And by the way, Owens was selling all of his injuries here. He walked out there like a mummy that was just brought back from the dead. And after the handshake, Strowman saying no, and with another power slam, and just left Owens laying there. And we move on to a tag team match between Rhino with Heath Slater taking on the Raw Tag Team Champions of Matt Hardy and Bray Wyatt. But before the match even started, there was a interruption on the Titantron where the B Team, impersonating Bray Wyatt and Matt Hardy, of course, Bo Dallas impersonating his brother Bray, and Curtis Axel impersonating Matt Hardy. One of the funniest segments I've seen in quite some time, in recent time. My only gripe here is, why can't they cut the commentators for that moment? I mean, it wasn't a long segment to begin with, but I understand it's funny. I mean, the rest of us are laughing too. We're reacting to it, but you know, it just doesn't feel to me as natural as if we were there, because you know the live audience is not going to hear the commentators. So that's something I feel where the audience and that's in attendance can share with the audience that's watching from home as an even playing field, where you're not hearing over the speakers, you know, laughter because the commentators can't help themselves, and they're probably pissing their pants. It was so funny. But something like that, I think, you know, production-wise, and to add more to the drama, just cut them off once in a while, including something like this. And, you know, it's just another nitpick and gripe of mine from back in the day where it was so much better. But this is definitely a time where they should have cut them off. And the match itself begins as Rhino and Heath Slater were, we got a match here, guys. And it's a pretty good match, pretty competitive. But at the end, we saw the champions win, and looking forward to the tag team title defense against the B team. More than likely at Extreme Rules. I might have missed that part if it was announced already, but now they have the time to build up between now and then, between both teams, to cut even more entertaining and hilarious promos. It was a great impersonation of Bo Dallas, of his brother, as I don't know what he had. It was some kind of little lamp with obviously it was battery operated, but they were trying to get out of frame as Bray would normally do with Matt Hardy, and you could still hear them like, hey, they can still see you. Wait, what? No, get a little lower. No, they can still. No, I just move over. It's like those little details of basically mocking what Bray and Matt Hardy do, and with the disappearing act, and it was just really hilarious, really spot on. And I'm looking forward for more entertaining segments from the B team. So apparently Sasha Banks and Bayley kissed and made up as they teamed up against the Riot Squad members of Liv Morgan and Sarah Logan. Morgan would pin Sasha with a handful of tights here, and Sasha was visibly upset. She walked away from Bayley as Bayley was trying to comfort her and explain the end of the match, I guess, because they lost. And then we see them backstage, and they get into another brawl. Another brawl from a few months ago that we thought that was the end of their friendship leading to a feud. I guess this was take two, and they got into another fight backstage. They got separated, and we will see them later on in another segment where Bayley was just, trying to scream at Sasha to stop so she can turn around and talk to her, but Sasha wouldn't hear it. Sasha didn't even bother to change out of her ring gear, just threw a jacket over herself and dragged her luggage into a rent-a-car and drove away. They didn't want to hear anything for what Bayley had to say, and that was the end of it. I think Bayley even threw a water bottle at the car, and like, what was that supposed to do? It was a plastic water bottle, and I would have thought that would have set off Sasha to hit the brakes and then come back out like, hey, how much money I pay for this rent-a-car? Something just to set her off again and have another fight in the parking lot. But we move on. Kurt Angle comes back out, battered and bruised from the Ronda Rousey attack, as he was about to announce a new challenger for Brock Lesnar's Universal title. But here comes out Roman Reigns, and then shortly after Bobby Lashley, as they both claimed reasons for them individually be the next challenger for Brock Lesnar. Interesting here that Lashley will come out and proclaim himself as wanting to be the next challenger, even though rumor has it this is a match that Vince doesn't really want to set up or want to see in WWE, Brock Lesnar against Bobby Lashley, which I would think at this point a legit match where both men have MMA styles and experience, and I think it'll be a great throwdown. I mean, who else can match up with Lesnar at this point other than Lashley in a legit shoot fight? But moving on. So Angle was trying to say at Extreme Rules that there will be a multi-man match, unclear yet at this point, but that the winner will take on Brock Lesnar for the Universal Championship at SummerSlam. And at this point, the tag team of the Revival show up. We haven't seen much of them lately. And they were bragging about the bigger names, the main eventers, keeping down the little guys like the Revival down. And of course, tag match. And sure enough, Angle says, Lashley and Roman, you team up and take on the Revival. And that begins now. So the match wasn't nothing special other than Lashley and Roman basically trying to one-up each other and using each other's spears, as Lashley would get the win for the team. And like, I guess another one of those anything you could do, I could do better scenarios here. But interesting to see if the idea is to move forward Lashley and Roman to feud, leading to Extreme Rules and then eventually to SummerSlam. This could work for Roman Reigns' part here. They're probably thinking we're going this the wrong way. We need to put Roman Reigns in there with an actual opponent. No disrespect to Jinder Mahal, regardless of what you may or may not think of him when he was WWE champion and his changes, if you will, when he returned to the WWE about a year or so ago. They saw something in him. I may not have exactly seen maybe word for word or detail by detail the same as Vince might have seen in Jinder Mahal, but whenever it comes to these big physical looking guys that can possibly pose a threat for the title or anyone's push, then yeah, they deserve at least an opportunity. I mean, look what they tried to do with Vladimir Kozlov, and they realized their mistake. That didn't work. But with Jinder, it worked out to a point where he was an antagonist and he was a heel. Maybe the fact that he wasn't American helped a lot more. But again, they tried the same with Kozlov, but There was just more of a better spark in Jinder than anyone else, and it worked out. So with Lashley, we all know his history. We all know where he came from and what he did before returning back to the WWE. Maybe they want to see another legit MMA fighter take out Roman Reigns in the fans' point of view. But we'll see when, and you know they will, but when will they announce the match one-on-one with Roman Reigns and Bobby Lashley? No Way Jose took on Mojo Rawley, who now claims to be no longer hyped, but focused. I guess they ran out of coffee. But Mojo gets the win here after Flapjack and gets the win. And in the main event, we saw Braun Strowman team up with Finn Balor take on Kevin Owens, all beaten and bruised, and Constable Baron Corbin, as Owens was still selling from the Money in the Bank. Strowman would spear Kevin Owens through the table near the timekeeper's table. Spear him through the wall near the timekeeper table. They don't have a table there, right? Anyway, Corbin will end up the end of days on Finn Balor in the ring in the meantime and gets the win. My question here is now, where do they go from here? They still haven't announced this multi-man match for Extreme Rules. If any of these men are involved, minus Braun Strowman, because it's kind of like a double negative here. Why would he put him in a multi-man match where Strowman already has the Money in the Bank briefcase? That's like giving him two chances in one to get a title shot. But assuming Finn Balor will be involved, Kevin Owens, and maybe even Baron Corbin himself. SmackDown pretty much opened up their show the same way Raw did, a copy and paste situation here where Carmella was celebrating her title victory in a celebration, and now comes James Ellsworth once again dressed as Asuka, and of course showing off his inability to wink to the crowd, only to have the real Asuka come out and kick away Ellsworth, and then gets knocked out by Carmella at the end and leaves. So once again, Asuka not looking her best here ever since WrestleMania when she lost the first match, and it's pretty much been going downhill. But we'll see how this story builds up more and more, leading to, I guess, the next pay-per-view. Sanity finally debuted on SmackDown as they were scheduled to face the Usos in a tag match. But instead, they just come in, they do their poses, they do their signature shticks, if you will, in the dim light that they used, and just beat the crap out of the Usos. The match never started. The match never took place. So more than likely, we'll have a rematch this week on SmackDown. Great promos between Jeff Hardy and Shinsuke Nakamura. Not together, but separate and individual, as looks like Jeff Hardy was pissed off enough from the previous encounter with Shinsuke back to using his war paint and these different colored contact lenses. I think similar to Finn Balor and his demon gimmick, Jeff Hardy brings out this just different character when he's painted up and using multicolored ring attire or in his hair, just to match the face paint. And I think it's like a different version of Jeff Hardy, obviously, as opposed to Brother Nero, which we may not see anytime soon in WWE. But I'm intrigued in this. Since Shinsuke is going to be obviously out of the WWE picture run, or the WWE Championship picture, he can go after the secondary title, that being the United States Championship, that happens to be owned or held, I should say, by Jeff Hardy. So their first match on SmackDown last week was very good, and I can't imagine what can they do when the title's on the line. So definitely looking forward to this. I'm sorry, folks. I'm so tongue-tied today, as I got a lot to get through and not much time to do it in. So there was a rematch from the SmackDown kickoff show. I'm sorry, the Money in the Bank kickoff show, as the SmackDown Tag Team Champions of the Bludgeon Brothers defended against Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson here. A slightly better match from the kickoff show, but they were both very good. This one was a little better, but as the champions retain after once again a two-man powerbomb and retain the belts. And the match is over, and they're not even ready to get to leave the ring yet, the Bludgeon Brother, that is. And all of a sudden, we hear Daniel Bryan's music hit, getting ready for the main event gauntlet match with 5 men. And the former Y family members, they meet each other in the rampway and just stare at each other until finally the music stopped for a moment. There was more staring. Bryan was still walking in between the two Bludgeon Brothers, and the music hits again And it's like, okay, you guys been staring at each other long enough. Let's keep moving. And they leave, and Bryan gets in the ring. They come back from commercial, and the first match was against Big E. What a great match between these two. And at the end, saw Danel Bryan get eliminated. Eliminate Big E with a flying knee. And then at number 3 comes out Samoa Joe. Another great match with Danel Bryan. Many were saying Joe was overzealous here as he applied the coquina clutch on the outside of the ring, only for Bryan to sneak back in, and Joe was counted out. I think that was a good way to save that possible feud between the two, since neither one laid down for the other, so to speak. And if this was an indication, I'm looking forward for another great match between Samoa Joe and Danel Bryan. And at number 4, right before that happens, actually the Bludgeon Brothers would return and sneak in through the back, so to speak, and they grab Danel Bryan and once again perform their 2-man powerbomb and just leave Danel Bryan laying there. And at this moment is when number 4 comes out, being The Miz, and all he had to do was like, who was it? Was it Graves who said that? Pick the bones of Danel Bryan, where he just picks him up and performs the skull-crushing finale. He gets the 3 count. So adding more fuel to that fire, because Bryan is still yet to resolve that issue with The Miz. So out comes number 5 being Rusev and The Miz. So kind of heel versus heel here, even though it wasn't officially established that Rusev is a babyface, but the fans' reactions say otherwise. But Rusev comes out and gets the win over The Miz with the accolade, and will now face AJ Styles for the WWE Championship. Date yet to be announced. More than likely, will kick off at Extreme Rules, leading into SummerSlam. So both Raw and SmackDown had a good show here, and he's hoping to have better shows in the future leading up to the next pay-per-view. And as I mentioned before, there were two stories that I'll get back to. Here's one of them, where Big Cass was released hours before SmackDown began their live broadcast, and it was carried out by Vince McMahon himself after calling a meeting. No other details were known at the time about Cass's departure, but Vince called a meeting at the SmackDown TV tapings and fired Big Cass on the spot. And it was speculated that Cass was going against a directive. And here's where a lot of speculation starts. During a recent segment that might have contributed towards his release, it was reported back in May that Cass was in hot water due to going off the script during his segment with little people in the ring, one of them portraying or mimicking Danel Bryan, where all Cass had to do was do one kick and that'll be it. But Cass continued on, going into business for himself, thinking, I'm assuming the thinking there was that he was trying to impress the higher-ups, if you will, but that didn't work out. And here's what Mike Johnson of PW Insider had chimed in with, that a reader of PWI attended the June 2nd live event of the WWE in Waco, Texas, and claimed, even though there's no video of this, but giving this fan the benefit of the doubt, claims that Big Cass spat on the fan in the front row before throwing a fit with WWE producers at the event, saying there has been reports of him being a little immature at times and maybe getting frustrated during matches. We had one reader that wanted to see a match in Waco, and he had written to us saying that Cass spat on the front row. Johnson will go on to say, I never got the second accounting of it, but there have been times where he've heard about Cass rubbing people the wrong way. Not the Enzo Amore extent, but I think it was the case where he got a little bit of heat and never got over it. The injury was horrible timing, and when he came back, he never really impressed. That was Mike Johnson from PW Insider chiming in on his point of view of things. And more details of possible reasons of his release. Cass was blowing off a promo rehearsal with Kevin Dunn, going along during a live version of the same promo of behavioral issues on the European tour, including an incident where Big Cass locked himself out of a bathroom and broke down the door. Cass believed that he was being pranked, but no one else could have used the bathroom privately due to the damage. So there are multiple reasons here, and there are people that either witnessed this or can pass it along as fact. Either way, it doesn't sound really good. You know, I was just joking around with a few of my colleagues from the BKC Radio Connection that the timing of this is unbelievable, where you have Big Cass rejoining the WWE, returning from his injury, and then he gets drafted to SmackDown and basically working on the same show of his ex-girlfriend Carmella. And the same week you see James Ellsworth returning, and then the next time you hear about Big Cass is being fired. So, and you know, the mock story there was, and that's all it is, a mock story. I'm not even considering it a rumor, because it's just, you know, me thinking dumb things, where James comes in and then the ex-boyfriend gets kicked out because there's going to be a working relationship between Carmella and James Ellsworth. And they've gotten close together, even before Ellsworth was released a year ago. And I'm just going on what it was tweeted by Carmella and James themselves among the two, you know, how bad and sad that they felt after the release. But, you know, I would imagine you can get close to someone, you know, regardless of whatever status the other person might be in. But it happens in the workplace. You work, if all you do is see each other and talk to each other every day, all day, you get to know the person. Had something developed there? I mean, I don't know. I can't prove that. I don't know anything about that. I don't have any sources in WWE to confirm that James Ellsworth and Carmella has an actual legit romantic relationship. I'm not saying that at all right now, but the timing there, one comes in and the other one leaves, it's just very interesting and intriguing. But none of that is obviously being mentioned here on possibilities as to why Big Cass was released to begin with, especially when you're not being well wished on your future endeavors. Speaks volumes. So, you know, it is what it is. UFC President Dana White, who was infamously referred to pro wrestling as fake shit on Twitter before, got involved in a match in Memphis during their Beale Street brawl as part of Dana White's Looking for a Fight series. Also involved in the match was WWE Hall of Famer Jerry the King Lawler. And the clips are up on YouTube. And you can see Dana White's involvement in the video, as he, along with good friend, former welterweight champion of the UFC, Matt Serra, help out Dredick King, keep another wrestler from being down and get a 3 count. As basically they piled up here to get a 3 count, along with Dana, Serra, and Dredick King for the win. And this was an outdoor event. It looked like one of those New Orleans type of environment, and it was just in between all these buildings. And it looked fun. At least Dana White was smiling for the most part. So I would imagine he had a good time, and hopefully has a different look and respect for pro wrestling in general. And speaking of Dana White, he said also that CM Punk is likely done in the UFC and will not fight for a 3rd time under the promotion's banner. This is a tough one for me. You know, so he's lost 2 in a row. I don't know what the limitations is or the expectation is. Of course, you got to win at some point, but unless this was in the contract, like if you don't win at least X amount of fights, we're gonna let you go. I really wish I had my MMA analyst Lolo from Lolo's Films with me. She will probably have more insight on this, of how it works. But if it's just a matter of being disappointed on his performance in 2 fights within 2 years, then I can understand that. Time, money, effort, a lot more was put into making this a reality, and it finally happened. But all of it just led to disappointment, and hopefully we won't hear the end, or that we won't hear the end of CM Punk involved with MMA. If that's really is his heart and passion, then don't give up on it. But Punk really is the only one that could say, you know what, I can't do this anymore for reasons. And hopefully that'll be enough for everyone to accept, and we can move on with life from it. An updated story on Danel Bryan and his contract situation, according to BW Insider. While they have been no conclusive signs of Bryan re-signing with WWE. It is quite possible that he has already done so. However, there is an equal possibility that his deal will expire on September 1st, as formally reported. The WWE are looking to tie down their performance in a long-term 5-year deal, like they did with Kevin Owens recently and The Miz. But there is no official word yet if Daniel Bryan has signed any extensive contract or re-signing a new deal with the WWE. Well, I should have mentioned this during my TakeOver review, but former PWG and WWN champion Keith Lee was shown at ringside during TakeOver Chicago. So this pretty much confirms all the rumors that he was going to sign with NXT, and he has. And I had a very brief moment to meet the man a couple of months ago, Keith Lee, that is. And had I known then what was happening, I definitely would have, spent more time talking to him. But congratulations are in order here. I mean, speaking to many students of the WWN and the Samoan Training Center, that's their goal. The majority of them have told me that that's their goal, to eventually make it to the WWE, or at least be a part of the NXT, growing experience and perform on that level. And I know I spoke to Chico Adams and Tony Ice, just to name a few, who work out here in the Florida area. And Chico has had an opportunity to appear on NXT before. Tony Ice is still waiting for his opportunity, but it is possible, and I'm really happy for all these guys to get that opportunity, and hopefully we'll grow from there on a much larger scale of worldwide exposure. Mae Young competitor, the alpha female Jazzy Gabbert, has announced on her Instagram account that she has been cleared for in-ring action after undergoing neck surgery 6 months ago. On the video posted on Instagram, the caption states, "I am back. My doctor gave me the green light to step back into the ring and go back to competitive training. I'm available for bookings again." So that's Jazzy promoting herself out there, as she also revealed in the video that she was fully healed and has been given the green light to return for competition. And Jazzy was eliminated in the first round by Abby Leith, I believe, during the Mae Young Classic. And she was offered a contract by WWE, but after physicals by the doctors, and later on it was having 3 herniated discs in her neck revealed, she couldn't be medically cleared at the time, and the contract was revoked, unfortunately. But now, hopefully, this gets back to WWE officials and have a great opportunity to return. Maybe not for the next Mae Young Classic tournament. It might be too soon, but eventually in the future. And speaking of Brock Lesnar, because I'm losing my voice here, Dave Meltzer reported from the Wrestling Observer, Brock Lesnar is yet to be booked for SummerSlam, despite earlier expectations that a match with Roman Reigns was all but done. Meltzer will go on to say, according to the Observer, that is, we've since confirmed, as noted in last week's issue, that Lesnar versus Reigns once again is in the works for the SummerSlam main event, and it would be the last fight Lesnar is now contracted for. But at least as of this weekend, on this past weekend, if you're going by the timetable, this was not a done deal. Lesnar at this point is not confirmed by Vince McMahon for SummerSlam, or any dates for that matter, which is weird since he has the title. He's aware and knows about it, and it makes sense to expect it, but unless it happened in the last 2 days or so, the green light hasn't been given for whatever reason. Which is also interesting because in the upcoming Super Showdown on October 6th, Raw and Smackdown superstars will be on hand for a showdown under in Australia. And during the video promotions and some other posters that's been already revealed, Brock Lesnar is not on any of them. And this is, so far, the only match announced is Triple H versus The Undertaker in, quote, for the last time since their end of an era match since WrestleMania, what was it, 28, in the Hell in a Cell match. But But it's too early for any titles to be on the line. And this comes after SummerSlam, obviously. And once again, by this point, unless things change between now and then, Lesnar's contract would have been expired. So what's the haps here? I would assume Dave Meltzer will get something going to report real soon, as nothing's been updated as of yet in the Wrestling Absorber website. But we'll see what happens. Dean Ambrose was spotted at the Performance Center in Orlando over the past few days as he continues to rehabilitate his torn tricep injury. Following the initial incident, WWE claimed that Ambrose would be out of action for 9 months. As of right now, we stand at his 6th month in recovery, and this WWE.com report did not suggest whether he's in training in the ring, but just that he's indeed present at the facility. So it's unclear if he's, which doesn't make any sense. I mean, I'm sure he stops by for advice and, have conversations with the students and anyone that's a coach there, such as Norman Smiley and Shawn Michaels, and just conversate while he's there. The Performance Centers do have equipment for rehab situations, such as Dean Ambrose's case here. But if he's not in the ring performing, then he can do other physical training or other types of physical rehab to help him heal better and maybe even quicker. He doesn't have to necessarily step into the ring to do that. So this report might have been a little bit obscured a little bit, even though it's coming from WWE. So they probably just not give too much expectations to the readers. And hopefully we can see Ambrose feel much better by the end of the year and maybe see him back for a Royal Rumble return. Brian Alvarez from the Wrestling Observer speculates about the possibility of Brock Lesnar showing up at the UFC as the Universal Champion. I don't know about this one, but he goes on to say Lesnar could very easily show up at a UFC event. He has 16 days left to add himself, 16 days from, I would say, the beginning of the week when this was first reported. 16 days left to add himself to the USADA pool to fight before the end of the year. Obviously, I think it's very unlikely he faces John Jones, and I talked about this last week. John Jones probably is going to be suspended for a year or so, if not more, and this is not going to happen. But there is a Daniel Cormier fight coming up with Stipe Miocic, and if they decide that Lesnar's going to fight the winner of that fight, then maybe have Lesnar show up with the Universal Championship, at least for the stare down or the face-to-face after the match. Maybe not in the octagon itself, but probably in the press conference, the post-press conference. But Alvarez will go on to say, I believe that's July 7th. Lesnar could show up at the UFC as WWE Champion on July 7th and challenge the winner of that match. Then it would be up to Vince McMahon to get the damn belt off of him, because he will still be champion. And if he goes, and if he's got no dates, so we'll see what happens. But I don't expect him to fight with the WWE Championship around his waist in December, would be my guess. So yeah, I'm pretty much on par with Brian Alvarez here. It's highly unlikely, and it's never been done before, and probably for that statement alone will be the only reason to pull it off, just to have bragging rights. But assuming there wouldn't be any kind of legal outcomes out of this, meaning, one man's property showing up in someone else's, and it wasn't cleared, so now there's going to be lawsuits ensued, and I'm pretty sure that's not something Dana White wants to have after having such a great relationships thus far with WWE, especially being invited to this year's WrestleMania. So I hope nothing like this happens. I hope that nothing tarnishes their coexisting, if you will, between UFC and WWE. But just like Alvarez here, time will tell. We just have to wait and see. Rey Mysterio is reportedly in discussions with WWE for about a 3-year contract to return to the company. Mysterio spoke up about his status with the company during Rey Mysterio Day, celebrated in San Diego this past Tuesday. But as of right now, no deal has been made between the two sides, and no deal has been reached as well. It was noted that the deal reportedly depends on if Rey is granted a part-time schedule, something that he's been asking for while negotiating with WWE. If he signs, it's still unclear when Mysterio would start working for WWE again. He did appear at the Greatest Royal Rumble in Saudi Arabia last month, but still has dates upcoming, including All In on September 1st. And the schedule here is a little bit out of order when it was written down, but it's also speculated that he will appear at the New Japan Pro Wrestling G1 special in San Francisco on July 7th, and AAA's Triple Mania 26, I believe they're up to, on August 25th. So another reason part-timers would want that kind of schedule, because it leaves them open to other opportunities elsewhere around the world, not involving WWE, of course, to make a little bit more income. And honestly, who can blame them? And at this point, Rey Mysterio has already reached legendary status, and I think he more than deserves an opportunity to have a part-time schedule with WWE. Charlotte Flair will be featured in the upcoming ESPN magazine Body issue that hits newsstands this week. ESPN is celebrating their 10th anniversary of their annual Body issue with hashtag Body10. Okay, these, if anyone who hasn't seen these but have heard of them, these are not, well, how can I explain this? They are the pictures taken of men and women from different sporting companies, different sporting agencies, in this case, say NFL, WWE, UFC. Many big names have done this for the ESPN Body issue magazines. I believe Charlotte Flair will be the first ever WWE superstar to do so. Now, from what I've seen online, these pictures are full nudity, but you do not actually see the nudity itself. So they're covered up. They are covered up themselves in specific body poses, or the cameras are shooting from different angles, and you don't see anything, you know, as far as their natural, you know, birthday suits go. It's really hard to explain, but they're naked, but you don't see the nakedness, if that makes sense. I guess a la Austin Powers style, if you will. And superstar Billy Graham took issue with this for reasons, as he took to his Facebook page and was asking others if you will let your daughter do something like this. Clearly, my impression is that superstar Billy Graham is under the impression that this is something like Playboy, because he just went on to say things like, you know, she's posing nude for a magazine and this and that. How can Ric Flair do something like this and allow something like, okay, she's not promoting, you know, an adult magazine. She's not promoting her body like that, or advertising or selling her body in the nude, you know, to get some kind of money or revenue off of this. It's a form of art where you will see someone from a professional sports world, athlete, again, either men or women, because they've all done this. There was Michelle Waterston, there was Ronda Rousey, there was Conor McGregor has even done this. You know, basically showing off their body while concealed, but in a natural way, if that makes sense. And I really don't know where Billy Graham is coming from here with this. He just basically blew up in some of the comments I've seen, and there was one a-hole that said, "Oh, well, you know, there have been nude photos of Charlotte Flair before, so that's nothing new." Of course, he's referring to the leaked photos of Charlotte Flair, where you do see her in her birthday suit, and it was an unfortunate incident that had to happen. But this is more on a professional level. It's going to be professionally taken care of, and interesting to see how the fans are going to react to this. Of course, we'll have to wait for the numbers to come out and how many issues will be sold specifically. But hey, in her case, and I think she's mentioned it too on Twitter when the actual photo shoots were taking place, that she's proud of her body, and you know, she's willing to show off the hard work, at least show off enough where it's presented, you know, in a tasteful manner here. So if you're a fan of the body issues being distributed from ESPN magazine, this issue comes out this coming week, so hopefully it does well. So I mentioned earlier about Sami Zayn. It was reported he's taking time off to recover from some nagging injuries that he's been working through. and he has been dealing with some knee and shoulder injuries. At the time, as far as, say, this past weekend from Money in the Bank, it was unknown how bad the injuries were, so he's taken the time off and traveled to Birmingham, Alabama to get checked out. And it was speculated that this would possibly be the reason why Sami Zayn, his match during Money in the Bank was so lopsided, and that is felt his feud with Bobby Lashley isn't done and can get checked out. But according to PW Insider, once again, want to give a special shout out to them for presenting all these reports and stories. But Sami Zayn was not backstage on Raw, and here's the update where Sami Zayn is now going to be out up to 8 months after surgery of his right rotator cuff this week, and is planning for a second surgery for his other rotator cuff in Birmingham, Alabama. And all of this details and more are over at WWE.com, as that's going to take some time. So 2 rotator cuff surgeries, but no word about a knee surgery, as those were one of his nagging injuries. So he'll be out for a while, unfortunately, but that definitely means the rest of the year. So he'll miss SummerSlam, he'll miss Survivor Series, maybe even Royal Rumble. But hopefully he doesn't renew his feud with Bobby Lashley, because by then they would have moved on anyway. And maybe even for a payback angle. But point being, get well soon, Sami Zayn, and we're going to miss you, buddy. And I'll end with a couple of more stories here, as Hulk Hogan responded to Velveteen Dream's ring attire from TakeOver by Twitter, saying, "Yo, when Velveteen Mania hires me as a manager, then we'll have all the gold. Hollywood style, brother." Hollywood H. Hogan life. That was Hulk Hogan's quote via Twitter, and the Dream will reply, "Hollywood Dream has a nice ring to it, but Dream rides solo. Good try, Terry." Hopefully that was all done in character and not taking a jab, because he called him out as his real name, and still leaving speculations whether or not Hulk Hogan will return at any capacity with WWE anytime in the future. Finally, and I'm not sure how to take this story in particularly, considering it's uncharted waters, if you will, but I'll explain. As several WWE shows have been included in the Emmy Premium Ballot, WrestleMania 34 has been included in the Outstanding Variety Special for a live show category, while Raw and the Mixed Match Challenge have been included in the prelim ballot for Outstanding Structured Reality Program. Total Bellas and Total Divas are included in the Unstructured Reality Program category. The WWE Studios and HBO documentary on Andre the Giant has been included in the list of Best Documentary or Nonfiction Special. WWE Network's 24/7, the WWE Network's 24 Special Empowered has been included in the same category as the Andre the Giant documentary. And I guess Kevin Dunn is going to get what he always wanted, his wish to come true, and that to win an Emmy. Anyone that's followed Jim Cornette and his feud, if you will, with Kevin Dunn, is that the way he presents the WWE programming on television and production-wise, it's just not how it used to be in the old days. And I can relate a lot with that with James Cornette, and I can understand. And I said it before, it's ridiculous with this constant zooming in and out during a match. I mean, you miss a lot of the action, a lot of the cutaways are mistimed, and when we don't see someone do a run-in, but the audience does, and they're reacting, and we at home have to wait till somebody has a wide shot or zooms out of the current camera angle, it just gets really frustrating. And it's not the same. Obviously, it's not the same reaction that the live crowd is going to have versus the home crowd. And the best way to put it is they don't really care what happens at home. It's just what you see is what you get, kind of thing. So if this is the case, and if any of these shows I mentioned wins an Emmy Award, or just get nominated, because right now it's just on the ballot. Nothing's been nominated yet. But the fact that nominated is a big deal to a lot of people. And then to actually win on that same category is even a bigger deal. So I'm hoping that one of these shows gets a nod and wins an Emmy for whatever category, and Kevin Dunn's name is mentioned somewhere as producer or director or whatever he did, that this will end the reign of the Kevin Dunn story with WWE and just retire, because he's done it all. I mean, there was one report a couple of years ago after, you know, the quarterly reports from WWE came out, and one mentioned that Kevin Dunn was making more money than Vince McMahon. How is that possible? I don't know. I guess his position, his salary, and his tenure with the WWF and WWE, you know, things like that happen. But more power to him. And to add an Emmy Award to his accolades after so many years in the pro wrestling business, great. How about after that, you make your acceptance speech or whatever, and you step down and let someone else have a crack at productions with WWE and how they present Raw and SmackDown in particular, because that's what we see more of than anything else. So good luck. Hope it works out. But at the end, I think there's been enough of Kevin Dunn and his team. So it's time for some new blood in there. So at this point, I'm coming up nearly on a 2-hour mark. It's been a while since I've done a show like this long, but I had a lot to cover here. And I think with the breaking news of Vader passing away, you know, obviously it added to what I had to say this week. But again, it's just unfortunate. And of course, on long weekends when there's a takeover show, a pay-per-view, and then Raw and SmackDown, that I prefer to cover now on the JM Report. It's just going to add some time here, obviously. So, you know, I'll do my best moving forward to smooth stories out a little more better, and you know, not make it sound like I'm being rushed here, because here's the thing: when I reserve studio time here at the CSB Studios, if I'm lucky, there isn't someone before or after me, and I can have some leeway by staying a little longer. You know, I won't abuse it, but just long enough where I can get everything done and say what I got to say and do what I got to do. So with that, I want to give CSB Studios a special shout out and thank you for that. And I'll do my best next time to keep it within the structured time that was reserved for originally. So with that said, just want to thank everyone for listening. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments below or email me at IAmGoodOlJM@gmail.com. You can hit that like button and subscribe to my channel, as many more exciting things are coming my way as I'm currently working on. So everything's in progress. It's just a matter of timing of when and how. So once again, thank you to all my supporters. Special shout outs to all my longtime listeners. And I'll be back next time with a new episode of the JM Report, hopefully with better news and